a screen share too, so we could see each other.
Yeah, it was a good music though.
You want to put us back?
No.
No.
Can we talk?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Binu, who's going to introduce Suresh?
Suresh will be Nimi.
Nimi. Christy's not here, right?
Christy's there.
Oh, Christy's are here?
Yeah.
Okay, I can see. So സുരേഷിന്റെ വീഡിയോയ്ക്കകത്ത് അവസാനം തുടങ്ങുന്ന താങ്ക് യു ആനി എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ തുടങ്ങണേ. So I guess I will ask him to post 1 second after.
I think it's fine. I think it's fine because you invited him, so it's not a big deal.
Okay, so I don't have to do the introduction. I was just thinking, but I need to say. Okay, fine. Let's do that. Okay, fine.
So don't try not to do anything last minute.
Okay. I was gonna say maybe he was involved in the phase 3 trials or something like that. He and his wife were involved in the trial. Pfizer trials. That's fine. If that's okay, then I'm alright with it. പിന്നെ ആരാണ് ആദ്യത്തെ ആളിനെ ഇൻട്രോഡ്യൂസ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്?
ആനി ആ പറഞ്ഞ കാര്യം വേണമെങ്കിൽ അതിനോട് കൺക്ലൂഡിംഗ് റിമാർക്സിൽ പറയാം.
Why am I getting this enter? Are you on the host?
Yeah, you're one of the hosts, but don't worry about it.
Okay. I'm getting all these admit messages.
Don't worry. Okay, just in case if you all need to share the screen. I think, I don't know, but Annie, I think I see one, Leta Joseph, I'm assuming she's the National Health Forum Chair. I just think, is it
yes,
so?
Renee. Yes,
Yeah.
Renee. She's the National Health Forum Chair. Annie.
Yeah. Huh?
Yeah, hi. Dr. Leith, I'm here. So Dr. Leith, she just joined the WMC America region, and she is the National Health Forum Chair, America region.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Leda, for joining us today.
Thank you all. I think it was everybody who was making this announcement. I am Leta. I prefer to be called Leta, just plain and simple.
Okay.
Where are you located, Lata?
In North Carolina.
Okay.
Ms. Mukherjee, I think you are muted and you were trying to say something.
Yes. Actually, I was going to suggest to Annie to write her name in front of her husband's name.
Okay, thank you.
So you can change it by hovering around your name.
Yeah, I know. This is his account. I'm stealing his account. Thank you.
Hi, Lata. I'm Anu.
I am nice meeting you all.
Nice to meet you. Yeah. I'm across the river in Jersey. I'm at Cooper Hospital, with Annie.
I work with the Durham VA healthcare system as a nurse practitioner for post-acute care inpatient rehab center. Then I am a faculty at Duke University School of Nursing and an adjunct at UNC faculty.
Oh, nice. Okay. So, yeah, it's a triple position that you have. Yes.
No, the UNC one is my honorary kind of involvement. Duke was also honorary. I try to take my time because I learn a lot and it gives opportunities for writing and publication, presentation.
I did change it, yeah.
And then, started kind of small job.
How is it in North Carolina right now?
It is cold, weather-wise, but we anticipated some snow and ice for this weekend. Did not come, but not upset about it.
Yes, keep it that way.
Then vaccination-wise, my place started February in North Carolina. Our place started the first set of vaccination, and I received my second dose the day before yesterday.
Oh, good. Was it the Pfizer?
Yes. tomorrow, let me take it. They said, Lata, you might get sick. I said, no, I am strong. But I did not get sick. I went to work. And exactly 24 hours passed. I thought I was feeling better, like a cold. And it went away. See, I'm talking to you, I'm fine then.
Yeah, you look perfect. Yeah. Good.
Yeah, for the first round, we vaccinated around nearly 2,000 people, 2,900 something, which included the staff and patients.
And the storage unit is all right for the ultra cold temperature.
For my Durham VA healthcare system, we have even other hospital type of this in Fayetteville. Then we have few community-based clinics. They are all waiting for Moderna unless they come and get it at the Durham VA.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do have good storage and
Ram, welcome. And Suresh, welcome. You both are muted. Okay?
Hi, Suresh, how are you? Hi, Jerry. Good evening.
Jerry's here? I couldn't see.
Yeah.
How are you?
Jerry, hi. Hello, Nemi. How are you? Siju,
I thought I made her a co-host. I'll do it again. I'm doing it. Renee, anybody else needs to be co-host?
and of course, Christy, myself,
Yeah, can
Dinu,
you check the list and let me know? No, I think Moments.
ക്രിസ്റ്റിയുടെ മൊമെന്റ്സ് മൊമെന്റ്സ് ലൈഫ്
Yeah, he's already a co-host.
Hello?
No, Santosh is a co-host. So probably not coding. Dr. Sudesh, PCN? Yes, Oh, okay, I see.
Every
Okay.
time you call my
December 31st, 2019.
Steve. Good evening, sir. You're on mute, I guess.
Niti. Thank you.
Good evening. Gopi sir, good evening to you.
Good evening, good evening.
How are you doing this evening?
Very fine, sir. How are you?
Very good, sir. Thank you for coming, joining.
Thank you.
We're just waiting for a couple more minutes so that we can have a rocking start.
Yes, yes. We already have about 82 people joined. 84.
85, 86.
84.
It's
It is increasing. Very good. Very good.
Our health forum team has really worked to make this even.
Hi, Rini.
Our Madam President, Thankam.
Yes.
I can see you,
very rightly you selected this topic in right time.
Yes.
Very good.
We are under your leadership in the region, you know.
Rini, Kaliyakan.
Hello all, this is Madhu Nambiar.
Hello.
Welcome.
ഹലോ മധു,
ഹായ്
ആളെ ചെയ്യുന്നത് എന്തുണ്ട് വിശേഷം?
സുഖം തന്നെ. Thank you so much.
So we are hitting that clock of 7:30, but I think MCs, wow, MCs, I think we should give a couple more minutes, all right, Annie, to see some people.
Yeah, good evening all. This is Vijay Krishna, the Council Community Affairs. Happy New Year to all of you.
Oh, thank you, Jay sir. Thank you for coming. And
New Year.
Good evening, everyone. This is Shatrughan Sinha, Deputy Consul General.
oh, welcome, sir. Thank you so much for accepting our invite.
Welcome.
My pleasure. But you would notice that I am in a car. I hope that is okay with you.
So, yeah, are you telling us that we don't have the pleasure of meeting you in virtual?
No. I was just checking whether this is fine. I understand. I would have loved to be in my home, but I was traveling, and then so I felt that I can join on the mobile.
That's fine. We understand. But at some point, I hope you would visit the city of Brotherhood, Lao.
Absolutely. Next time, whenever I come to Philadelphia, I am going to meet the members of World Malayali Council.
I appreciate together as a team, we appreciate that, and we do have requests for you. That we have our list to talk to you about the concept of having an office.
Use the right lane to exit right. I'll be happy.
Great, excellent. Now we're just waiting for a couple more minutes
Sure.
to make sure that
No problem. I'm here.
Yes. Not bad that we got about 125 people on the start line.
ഒരു couple of minutes കൊടുക്കുക. കുറേ പേരോട് കേറുന്നുണ്ട്. ഷാലുവാണ്. Some more time.
We'll start exactly at 7:35. So 3 more minutes, please.
Okay.
Live, is it going live?
Yes.
Facebook
Hi, Lita.
Hello, Johnny Chitai.
Welcome, Mr. Sinha. Council General, this is Hari Nambudiri, the Chairman of American Region.
Thank you, Mr. Nambudri. It's a pleasure to join you.
For those who have already joined, everybody know that we're going to record this meeting. So with everybody's permission, I'm going to start recording the session. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I guess, are we ready to start? Annie, you're on mute. Are we ready to start?
Yes, yes.
So I think 7:34. Siju, are we ready or?
Yeah, 7:35, Renee.
7:35. Okay, okay. And just for your information, Moments to Live is now telecasting this entire thing live on Facebook and in YouTube. Just in case if you all want to share it.
Please send the link on the chat box, please.
Good evening, friends. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to friends, family, members of World Malayali Council, and all the viewers across the world. I, Nimidas, welcome each one of you to this enlightening occasion. World Malayali Council is a non-sectarian global organization which engages in promoting the welfare and empowerment of Malayali living across the globe. World Malayali Council Pennsylvania Province, relatively young yet vibrant team originated on August 9th, 2020, has accomplished and extended helping hands to various charity programs in Kerala and visual programs in a short span of time. Viewers, lend me your ears, and we, the World Malayali Council Pennsylvania Province, will like to take you through the path of knowledge about COVID-19 vaccine. Being a receiver of vaccine myself, I'm truly excited to be part of this event. Now, I would like to introduce my partner for this auspicious occasion who will MC along with me. It's none other than our own energetic and enthusiastic member of Pennsylvania Province, Dr. Binu Shajimon. Dr. Binu, take it away.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Binu Shajimon, WMCPA Province Joint Secretary and one of today's MCs. It's my privilege to be hosting this program with Nimi Das. She's the WMCPA Province co-chairperson. We are here with a panel of experts to share the latest on coronavirus pandemic and emerging vaccines. The COVID-19 pandemic has been stressful for many people. It has caused many deaths and the lingering health concerns for those who have contracted the disease. And it has disrupted all our lives in many other ways. WMCPA Province is a proud host of COVID-19 Educational Health Forum to discuss groundbreaking research and development on COVID-19 vaccines, followed by a Q&A session with an elite group of panelists consisting of physicians and scientists to answer some of your questions. While the record-breaking levels of COVID-19 infections, hospitalizations, and death continue to sweep the country. Before we begin this session today, please join me in a moment of silence to reflect, meditate, and pray for the innocent men, women, and children who lost their lives due to COVID-19 outbreak, and for the thousands of families and friends who wait in terror and grieve their loss, and finally for the brave, frontline and essential workers who have dedicated and lost their lives fighting relentlessly for protecting us. Let's observe a moment of silence now.
Nimi, you are on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Binu. Nasoya Nair, a prolific poet and author of 85 poems and 6 stories to her credit, an active member of World Malayali Council Pennsylvania Province, and our literacy coordinator will recite her own pen poem that is dedicated to the first-hand responders who stood and still stands in the front line to protect and care selflessly in the midst of this pandemic. Ms. Soya is the recipient of Literacy Award, including Fakana 2015, Kavita Puraskaram, and Akshara Mudra Pratham Sahitya Puraskaram. She also directed the short film Era. Let us hear from the poetess in her own voice.
സ്വജീവനെ മറന്നും സ്വജീവനെ വെടിഞ്ഞും ഉയിർപ്പിൻ തുടിപ്പുകൾ അണഞ്ഞിടാതെ കാവലായി കരുത്തരായി കരുതലോടെ പൊരുതിടും ധീരരെ നന്ദി എന്ന വാക്കിനും അതീതമാം സേവനം നൽകിടും നിങ്ങളെ വണങ്ങിടുന്നു ഞങ്ങളും കരുത്തരായി കരുതലോടെ പൊരുതിടൂ ധീരരെ.
Thank you, Soya, for that beautiful poem dedicated to the frontline workers. Today, we have expert panelists joining us with a lot of scientific information on COVID-19 outbreak and the emerging vaccines. Along with the many of you joined on Zoom, we also have hundreds of people watching this program through YouTube and Facebook. I kindly request you to switch your mobile phones to silent mode and mute yourself to avoid distractions. Thank you all for your cooperation. Next, with great pleasure, I would like to invite our vibrant and esteemed WMCPA Province President, Mrs. Sinu Nair, for presidential address and welcoming everyone to this meeting.
Thank you, Binu. Good evening, USA, and good morning, India, and the rest of the world. Happy New Year. First of all, thank you so much for joining us today. World Malayali Council Pennsylvania Province welcomes everyone to today's event regarding the COVID-19 vaccine. Today's event is sponsored by Mr. Gilbert Cheeseman, Realtor, Ram Associates, Village of Cotton Green, Steve Lewis, Electronic Security, and Santosh Philip, US1 Pharmacy. World Malayali Council is a global organization of people of Kerala origin and is a non-partisan, non-sectarian, and international administration engaged in promoting the welfare and empowerment of Malayalis living across the globe by enhancing cooperation and communication among the Malayali diaspora and Malayalis living in Kerala. WMC started 25 years ago in the state of New Jersey. It's working as a 3-tier system: global, regional, and province level. Our Pennsylvania province started 5 months ago and working under America region. Now, I would like to welcome our amazing panel of physicians and scientists: Dr. Sinu P. John, Dr. Jerry Jacob, Dr. Suresh Palikut, Dr. Anu Mukherjee, and Dr. Nisha Nigel. We cannot wait to hear your thoughts on today's topic. Next, I would like to welcome our global leaders: Chairman Dr. A.V. Anup, President Johnny Kuruvilla, and all other global leaders to today's program. Next, I would like to welcome all our regional leaders: Chairman Hari Nambudiri, President Mrs. Thangamani Aravind, and other leaders to our program. I also welcome our previous American region president, Mr. James Scudder, who is kind enough to provide his Zoom account for today's function. Thank you, sir. Also, I would like to welcome all the global, regional, province leaders and WMC family members participating from all over the world. Thank you so much for coming and listening to today's informative panel of discussions. Also, I am welcoming my Pennsylvania province members, both Executive Council and General Council members, to today's function. Our chairman, Mr. Santosh Abraham, Secretary Siju John, Treasurer Renee Joseph, and the Health Forum Chair Dr. Annie Abraham, who has worked very hard to make this function possible. Last but not least, I am welcoming everyone who is joining through Zoom and those who are also watching us through our Facebook page and YouTube channel to today's function. Thank you so much.
You know, our chief guest, you missed Deputy Council General Shatrughan Sinha.
Oh, sorry, sir.
So please welcome.
Please, Deputy Chief Councilor Shatrughan Sinha. Sorry, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having
We
me.
already welcomed you, sir, before the
Of
beginning
course you did.
itself.
Of course you did, yes.
We are really honored to have you here.
Thank you for having me. Really, in normal times we would have met in person, but this is a special year, as you all know.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sinu, for the warm welcome. I would like to welcome Mr. Rennie Joseph, our relentless treasurer who works very hard every moment to keep our council moving at a great speed. Mr. Rennie now will introduce and recognize the sponsors for this event. Rennie, please take over.
Thank you, Limi. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. Our team worked really hard behind our Health Forum chairperson, Dr. Annie Abraham, to organize this very timely event. Winston Churchill once said, "We make a living by what we get. What we make a life by what we give." Nelson Mandela spoke, "What counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we led." Like our President Sinu Nai has mentioned, we are a young and dynamic province. In a short span of 4 to 5 months, we identified 3 individuals in India who were in extreme need of financial support due to their health conditions. We supported them by giving rupees 25,000 each to those individuals. Now, through this event sponsorship, we have raised funds to touch a few lives that were affected due to this pandemic. We're thankful to all our 5 sponsors for helping us to touch those lives. Our today's sponsors are, first, Mr. Santosh Philip. He is one of our own. He's the owner of US1 Pharmacy and US1 Home Care Agency. As a community, let's support Santosh in his ventures. Thank you so much, Santosh. Our second sponsor is Alan Gioni from Village of Cotton Green. He's been a friend of our community, and unfortunately, he could not be here this evening. And in his presence, in his absence, let us thank him and also support him. Gilbert Cheeseman is a dear friend and is very experienced realtor in both Pennsylvania and in New Jersey. He has done so many transactions buying and selling properties, especially for several Indian Americans. Let us reach out to him when his services are required. Thank you, Gil. In fact, Gil, if you're there, you can just come to the screen and say hello to our community. I don't see you. Gil, are you there? Assuming I saw you coming, but anyway, thank you, sir.
Yes, I'm here, Renee. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome, sir. And thank you for your support. And PK Ram is our 4th sponsor. His firm, Ram Associates, has been in the accounting business for over 40 years. Though his mother tongue is Tamil, he hails from Palakkad. Ram, thank you so much for your sponsorship. You can take 30 seconds to greet us, Ram, please. You are on mute.
Good evening, friends, and Happy New Year to all of you. I'm happy to be associated with the association. My name is Ramachandran, and we are Ram Associates. We are serving the community for the last 35 years. We are a full-service certified public accounting firm. We work with a lot of clients in different industries, small, large. We do take care of corporate tax, individual taxes, financial planning, due diligence, and we do full service, audit of financial statement wherever required. We work with banks, we work with the IRS, we work with the state, And recently, we have been helping a lot of our clients with the PPP loan and the loan forgiveness. And we are happy to work. We work with a lot of your members from the New Jersey. I heard Mr. Gopinathan sir on the maybe he's there, and so we work with a lot of clients. So we will be very happy to help anyone who needs. They can call us.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you so much.
I will have a word for Mr. Cheeseman. He's an excellent professional realtor. I will always recommend him, for his professional service.
Thank you,
Ram. Thank you.
Thank you very much. God bless.
Thank you, Gurman, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
And last but not least is Stephen Lulias, again a friend of our community. His firm specializes in electronic security. Let's reach out to him for all our security requirements. Stephen, thank you so much for your support, and please take 30 seconds to greet our community.
Well, thank you for allowing me to join this evening. My name is Steve Lulias with SMS Building Systems. We are in southern New Jersey. We service the New Jersey, Pennsylvania, tri-state region for your security needs, both residential and commercial. Video surveillance, card access, burglar, fire alarms, that sort of thing. We'd be happy to talk to anyone that has any concerns or needs and help in any way we can. So again, Steve Lulias, SMS Building Systems. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you, sponsors. And I assure you that this event will give you all an opportunity to connect with the community, to build more professional connections in the months and years to come. Let me end this with a famous quote from John Quincy Adams. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. World Malayali Council, Pennsylvania Province intends to be leaders by our actions to inspire others to dream more, to learn more, to do more, and become more. Thank you all.
Thank you, Renee. And thank you to the amazing sponsors who have made this program possible. Your contribution is greatly appreciated. Next, we have a short video on the COVID pandemic timeline presented by WMCPA Province.
December 31, 2019. WHO says mysterious pneumonia sickening dozens in China. Health authorities in China confirm that dozens of people in Wuhan, China, are being treated for pneumonia from an unknown source. Many of those sickened had visited a live animal market in Wuhan, but authorities say there is no evidence of the virus spreading from person to person. January 11, 2020, China reports first novel coronavirus death. Chinese state media reports the first death from novel coronavirus, a 61-year-old man who had visited the live animal market in Wuhan. January 21, 2020, first confirmed case in the United States. A man in his 30s from Washington state, who traveled to Wuhan, is diagnosed with novel coronavirus. Japan, South Korea and Thailand also report their first cases one day prior. January 30, 2020, WHO declares global health emergency. March 13, 2020, Trump declares national emergency. March 20, 2020, New York City declared U.S. outbreak epicenter. New York City State reports that more than 15,000 people have tested positive for COVID-19 and account for roughly half of the infections in the country. This year has presented many setbacks, suffering, pain and strife throughout the country. Our world has flipped upside down in many situations. Hospitals are overfilled with people suffering from the virus, schools are shut down, and people have lost their jobs as a result of downsizing. So what has happened over the past few months because of COVID-19? In the United States, there have been 19.6 million total cases of the virus, and 339,000 deaths. But around the world, 82 million reported cases, and of that, about 1.7 million deaths have occurred. The pandemic has pushed about 88 million more people into extreme poverty this year, and a large majority of these are due to healthcare costs. The COVID-19 pandemic is considered as the most crucial global health calamity of the century and the greatest challenge that humankind faced since the Second World War. Almost all the nations are struggling to slow down the transmission of the disease by testing and treating patients, quarantining suspected persons through contact tracing, restricting large gatherings, maintaining complete or partial lockdown, etc. Stopping a pandemic requires using all the tools we have available. During these unprecedented times, on November 2020, both Pfizer and Moderna's vaccine's success gives the world more hope now. In December, countries began to greenlight vaccines, developed at record speed. Britain became the first nation on Wednesday to approve the vaccine developed by Oxford and AstraZeneca, as it grapples with a new, more infectious variant of the virus. As experts learn more about how COVID-19 vaccination may help reduce spread of the disease in communities. Many people are still skeptical about new vaccines. So World Malayali Council, WMC, of Pennsylvania, is conducting this webinar to educate the community about the importance of vaccination. COVID-19 vaccination myths and realities.
Thank you, Binu. That was very informational and touching video. Now, I would like to call upon our Secretary, Siju John, to introduce the chief guest for this occasion. Siju?
Thank you, Nimi. Good evening, everyone. Our chief guest today is Honorable Deputy Consul General of India in New York, Mr. Shatrugna Sinha. Mr. Sinha is a career diplomat. He was born in the state of Bihar. Having joined the Indian Foreign Service in 2007, he has handled various responsibilities in Indian missions in Berlin and Islamabad. He served as Deputy Secretary Pakistan in the Ministry of External Affairs, New Delhi, before joining the Consulate General in New York. He has also served as the Regional Passport Officer and Regional Director for Indian Council of Cultural Relations for the state of Bihar. An electrical engineer by training, Mr. Sinha has previously worked for Infosys Technologies Limited and National Thermal Power Corporation. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and privilege to extend a hearty welcome to Honorable Deputy Consul General of India in New York, Mr. Shatrugna Sinha. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much for this very warm welcome. It is a privilege and an honor to join the members of the World Malayali Council today. It is also a special occasion because today we are celebrating the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas as well. On 9th January every year, we have for the last almost 2 decades, we have been observing this Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. It is a day on which we celebrate the contributions of the Indian diaspora living abroad, their deep roots and the commitment to the motherland, their contribution to India's development efforts. All these are celebrated on this day. Prime Minister has addressed the Pravasi Bharatiya Convention on 9th of January in India. Today at the Consulate General of India also, we observed this day by recognizing a number of individuals and organizations for their contributions to the community and to the society. World Malayali Council has organized this event to discuss the most important issue on our table, and that is the COVID vaccine and its efficacy, the myths and realities attached to the COVID vaccine. As you all are aware, the last year has been very difficult for everyone. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the members of the Indian American community. I'm sure World Malayali Organization has also contributed a lot in alleviating the pain of the people, in providing help to people in distress. We have the Consulate General and the Government of India has relied on members of organizations like World Malayali Council to reach out to people in distress. There were thousands of Indians stranded here in the US. Number of students had been forced to go back to India. A lot of people lost jobs. We at the consulate tried to provide as much assistance as we could, and in that effort, we were assisted by the Indian American community stood shoulder to shoulder with us. I would like to take this opportunity to thank and appreciate the Indian diaspora for their effort. Regarding the healthcare sector, there has been a very good relationship between partnership between India and the United States. India has contributed SCQ tablets initially, and to the city of Philadelphia, I must inform you all about this. To the city of Philadelphia, we have provided personal protective equipments. A lot of PPEs have come, especially for the city of Philadelphia from India, and this was after the mayor of Philadelphia requested Government of India, and we took that initiative to provide these PPEs in a short time. Regarding vaccine, India, of course, Pfizer and Moderna vaccines have been rolled out here in the United States. In India as well, 2 of the vaccines, Covishield and Covaxins, have been provided emergency uses approvals. We are looking at a number of other vaccine candidates as well, and the trials are going on. It is, I'm very hopeful and optimistic that the vaccines will be rolled out soon and will be rolled out in a scale which is unprecedented. Within a quick time, we should be able to vaccinate millions and millions of people so that this once-in-a-lifetime pandemic crisis is over with us. I would not like to take much of your time. I look forward to listening to the panelists. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to further collaboration with World Malayali Council again in future. Thank you. Jai Hind.
On behalf of everyone here today and WMC-PA Province, thank you, Mr. Shatrughan Sinha, Deputy Counsel General of India, for taking the time to speak to us today. And thank you for your insight into the most important topic that I know affect all of us here. Thank you once again for joining.
Thank you, ma'am.
Next, I would like to invite Dr. Annie Abraham for the opening remarks. Dr. Annie Abraham is serving as a hospitalist in the Department of Internal Medicine at Cooper University Hospital, Camden, New Jersey. She's an assistant professor at Cooper Medical School of Rowan University. She completed her medical degree from Temple University School of Medicine and her residency in internal medicine from Cooper University Hospital. She's also a board certified physician in hospice and palliative medicine. She has special interest in utilization management and preventive medicine. She has been taking care of COVID positive patients in the hospital. Please help me welcome Dr. Annie Abraham, who is the mastermind behind this event today, for the opening remarks.
Hello, namaskaram, and welcome to all. As you know, today's event is about coronavirus and COVID-19 vaccine. We have assembled an expert panel of scientists and physicians to talk about the coronavirus, how it's going to affect your body, how the body is going to respond to that virus, and how we can prevent this infection by using vaccine. What are the potential reactions to this vaccine? And what are the recommendations for special situations like pregnancy? After the introduction of each panelist, we will play a taped presentation on his or her topic. After all the presentations, we'll open up the floor for questions and answers. The panelists have attempted to incorporate the most frequently asked questions and their answers into their presentation itself. But if you still might have questions, if you have questions, please ask using the chat session. And I apologize for the technical nature and length of some presentations. We're trying to give you a complete picture of the topic at hand. Without further delay, I want to hand over the phone to Ms. Nimi Das to introduce the first panelist. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Annie Abraham. And this would have not happened without the spark from you. It is my honor to introduce Dr. Sinu P. John. Dr. John was honored his PhD in biochemistry and molecular genetics from University of Alabama at Birmingham. He attained his fellowships from Harvard and MIT in functional genomics of virus-host interaction. His current designation is as scientist at National Institute of Allergy at the National Institute of Health. He's also an adjunct associate professor in the Department of Biochemistry and Molecular and Cellular Biology. Besides that, Dr. John's passion to education has drawn him to be an instructor at Foundation for Advanced Education in Science at NIH. Another interesting fact is that Dr. John is the very own brother of our Secretary, C.G. John. It is my privilege to welcome Dr. John to this venue to discuss about the topic immunology. Dr. John, please take it away.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm going to talk about
Please bear with us for technical difficulty.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm going to talk about the SARS coronavirus and the immune response our body generate against it. So you know, this virus was first identified in Wuhan, part of China. From there, it spread due to its high transmissibility to the entire world almost within months. And by end of March 2020, the World Health Organization declared this as a pandemic. So what is the origin of this virus? Bats are believed to be the origin or the reservoir for this virus, where we get infection either through direct contact or through the other animals that contact bats. Okay. Bats have other viruses similar to this reported previously. If you remember, the Nipah virus outbreak happened in Kerala. The source was bat too, and even the more deadly virus like Ebola virus that also was originated in bat. So from the human to human, it is spread through nasal secretions or saliva. So the best way to prevent the spread is to use face coverings or keeping social distancing. And the unique feature of this virus is that if you look under the microscope, it looks like a crown because it has a protein called spike protein. That protein looks like the spikes on the crown. And that's how the name corona comes from, crown looking under the microscope. This protein, spike protein, is of interest to the scientific community for many reasons. First, this is the protein required for the virus to get into the human cells. And for the same reason, the immune system recognized that as a foreign structure, unique structure. And our body raise immunity against it. Okay. Now, this virus belongs to a family called Coronaviridae that has many other viruses. Of the 7 more important viruses, 4 of them actually constitute about 15% of the common cold you get every year. But you probably never heard about those coronaviruses because they cause very mild symptoms in humans. However, the other 3 viruses cause very severe symptoms. The current virus that is responsible for the pandemic now is named Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome Coronavirus number 2. Why is it 2? Because we already knew a similar virus before, which was first reported in 2002, that was named SARS coronavirus 1. okay, that had a fatality rate of about 9%, which is higher than the fatality rate seen for the current virus. The next virus was MERS coronavirus, which is Middle East Respiratory Syndrome coronavirus, or MERS coronavirus, which had a higher fatality rate, up to 34%. So compared to those two, the current agent, that is SARS coronavirus 2 for the pandemic now, has a lower mortality rate, or the fatality rate, which is less than 4%. So what makes SARS coronavirus 2 more concerning to us is its high transmissibility. That means it is highly contagious, and it spread from human to human very fast compared to the other two, though all three of them produce severe symptoms. This virus contains an RNA genome instead of a DNA, like what we have. So usually our genome is DNA, and then from the DNA we produce an RNA of the same sequence, and then using that sequence the cell produces the protein, which form the structural part of the many cells and the viruses. So now the one feature of this virus is that it has a protein called the RNA polymerase that is responsible for making more copies of the viral genome once inside the cell. That RNA polymerase is sometimes able to make wrong copies. Okay, it is not like our DNA replication, where we have high proofreading capabilities. So each time it replicate or copy an RNA genome, it makes some error in the genome, in the new virus. So each of those genomes become a new virus when the virus produce enough of the proteins for it, okay, and other parts of the viral components. Virus also require a protein called ACE2 from the humans to get inside. And because of its high error rate, this virus produce a new variant every time it replicates. And that is very common among all the viruses. And it's not as bad as HIV when comparing with the SARS coronavirus 2 we have. For example, the original virus that was present in Wuhan had a sequence coding for an amino acid called aspartic acid in the spike protein at the position 614. Okay, that was mutated to give a different amino acid, glycine, instead of aspartic acid. So this variant is called D614G variant, and that became the more predominant ones later on in the infection. So if you look at here, this particular variant was originated sometime in between January and February, but sooner, within months, that became the more predominant one all over the world. And more concerning is that there are more cases of variants we hear about. One from United Kingdom, which is named B117 lineage, and the other one from South Africa, which is named B1351. Both these variants show higher transmissibility than the previous ones. And it's of concern, of course, but they also have mutations on the spike protein. The spike protein is the one we use to generate vaccines. So it is of concern. However, currently there is no evidence to suggest that these new variants have any impact or higher disease severity other than the higher transmissibility we see in them, or they affect the current vaccine strategies to affect its efficacy. There is no such concern so far. However, we are keeping a close eye in those variants. These variants have appeared in the United States. At least 4 different states have reported already new variants. And I believe there are many other cases also present in the United States at the moment. It is not probably diagnosed because it can only be identified when you sequence the entire genome. which we don't do in the general testing. So how do we respond against an infection like a SARS coronavirus 2? Our body has immune system and has two arms for it. One is called innate immunity, or the innate immune cells in it, or the number two, adaptive immunity. So the cells in the innate immunity work similar to the military deployed at the border. When there is an invasion by an enemy, they fight back right away. At the same time, they also alert the entire defense system of the country. That's exactly what the innate immune cells do. They alert the adaptive immunity and the entire body. So adaptive immunity works differently. They're similar to a laser-guided missile defense system, which is capable of specifically targeting an enemy very precisely. And the cells in this adaptive immune system can also remember such a special enemy for a long time, in addition to specifically attacking them. So this is the strategy we use in vaccination. So vaccines make the adaptive immunity programmed to attack against the special or specific pathogen. In this case, it is SARS coronavirus 2. So in general, any infection leads to activation of our immune system, and the immune cells communicate each other through secreting certain proteins called the cytokines. And those cytokines are responsible for giving the symptoms associated with any diseases. So generally, the symptoms like fever or cough or a runny nose, body ache, all those are caused by the inflammatory cytokines released from your immune cells or the body rather than the virus, okay? But in response to the infection, okay? So the virus trigger the immune response, but the symptoms are mainly from the immune response you generate against it. In some cases, this immune response become uncontrolled, and that's where you see pneumonia, a later stage of the infection in virus, SARS coronavirus disease. And most people infected with the SARS coronavirus are able to clear the infection within days. So you'll see a virus load and an accompanying immune response, which is sufficient to control the virus replication. And the immune response, as well as the symptoms associated with, subside within days. Some people don't even develop any symptom. However, a small fraction of people, the population which are infected, for unknown reason, have higher virus load and accompanying higher immune response. Immune response and how that is regulated by the body is very complex. And at the moment, we cannot explain with a single word why this happens in some people versus the other, okay? What happens is that in those people, they have a higher immune response leading to a severe symptom, like acute respiratory distress syndrome, or shock, or even organ failures, which last longer. So in people who get infected with the SARS coronavirus, you can classify them as different stages. Some people don't even develop any symptoms, but some people who enter the stage 1 develop a mild symptom like fever or body ache or a dry cough. Some other people who progress further develop a more severe symptom like pneumonia, either with the hypoxia or without hypoxia. And in small number of population progress into more severe diseases, symptoms, that is like acute respiratory distress syndrome or shock, or even multi-organ failure, cardiac failure or renal failure, like that. And importantly, they all come back after virus is cleared, okay? Except for a few people who die and some other people who can never come back to the normal healthy status. And they may have a long-term morbidity or different morbidities where they can never come back to the previous healthy baseline. So the best way is to prevent SARS coronavirus infection. How can we do that? Get immunized. How can we get immunized? One way is, you probably heard about herd immunity through natural infection, where when you want to infect, your immune system develop immunity against it. But that's not advisable because it has potential for disease severity and even death. And some people, like I mentioned before, long-term morbidities. So that is not a good strategy. The best strategy would be vaccination, where you still acquire herd immunity with the very, 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 very minor side effects. And we can effectively prevent infection in the community and also in yourself. So by this, I will stop, and I'd like to thank all of you and also the organizers of this meeting and the office bearers of the World Malayali Council Pennsylvania for organizing this meeting and inviting us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Siju John, for enlightening us on how our body's immune response will respond to the SARS coronavirus. Thank you for that information. Moving on, I would like to extend a welcome to Dr. Jerry Jacob. He would be presenting on COVID epidemiology. Dr. Jerry Jacob, he serves as the Director of Infection Prevention and Antimicrobial Stewardship at Good Shepherd Penn Partners. He's also the Interim Chief Medical Officer at Good Shepherd Penn Partners and Assistant Professor of Clinical Medicine. Dr. Jacob completed his medical degree from University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine and his residency at UPMC Presbyterian Hospital. He completed his infectious disease fellowship at Temple University, and he has been actively involved in treating COVID positive patients. Dr. Jacob, please take it on.
Good evening. I'm going to talk a little bit about the current state of the pandemic in the US, and then a little bit about the symptoms you can get with COVID-19, and finally the treatments that we currently have available. So first, the current state of the pandemic. So this chart shows the number of new cases of COVID-19 that have occurred daily since the start of the pandemic. And you'll see back in April, we had that first wave that was primarily focused on New York, but also involved Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and several other states. That wave subsided, although never quite got back down to zero. And then we had a second wave in July that involved primarily the southern states, Florida, Texas, and that was a higher peak. And then that came down, although never quite returned to baseline. And then more recently, since the end of October, we've had our third wave that has really involved the entire US. It started in the Midwest, but then subsequently spread to the rest of the country. And you'll see that over the past few weeks, it looks like that has plateaued, but there are some anomalies in the data here because of the holidays, and there's variable reporting of cases over the holidays. So I think we'll really have to wait a couple weeks after the holidays towards mid or late January to see really where we are with this pandemic. So currently we have close to 21 million confirmed cases in the US. There are likely many more cases that are unconfirmed out there, as well as more than 350,000 deaths. So this data is a little bit more reliable. It shows the number of hospitalizations daily in the US since the start of the pandemic. So again, the higher the blue line, the higher the number of hospitalizations. And what you'll notice is that we currently have more people hospitalized with COVID-19 in the US than at any other point in the pandemic, currently more than 128,000. So this is not evenly distributed across the country. The states most heavily affected currently include California. You may have heard that the ICUs are filled there. Some of the other states around there, including Arizona, New York is heavily impacted, as well as some of the southern states. Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware appear to be doing a little bit better now than they were a couple weeks ago. But again, we'll have to wait a couple weeks after the holidays to really see where things stand. So moving on, just a little bit about the spectrum of disease, meaning what kind of symptoms and signs come along with COVID-19. So there are some people who are completely asymptomatic from the infection. That is, they have no symptoms whatsoever. And those are typically patients who are younger and do not have underlying medical conditions. On the other end of the spectrum, you have people who pick up pneumonias and end up in the ICU, and that can be fatal. Among those who develop symptoms, 80% will have mild disease, that is, symptoms that can be managed at home. They don't need to be hospitalized. 15% require hospitalization, and 5% require ICU admission. The symptoms of COVID-19 most often include fever, cough, and shortness of breath. Those are the most common symptoms. You can also get muscle aches, headache. Loss of taste or smell is a more specific sign for COVID-19. So if you develop that along with some of the other symptoms, it's more likely you have COVID as opposed to other viruses. Sore throat, congestion or runny nose, and nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea. So who is at highest risk for developing severe disease? So probably the most important risk factor is age. So this chart shows the percentage of cases across the US distributed across different age groups in blue. And then in orange, you'll see the percentage of deaths occurring in each age group. And what you'll notice is that while cases are occurring in 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds and 40-year-olds and 50-year-olds, the deaths are largely occurring in the older age groups, particularly above the age of 65 and older. Other risk factors include obesity or being severely overweight, as well as those with underlying lung, heart, or kidney disease, cancer, diabetes, as well as several other conditions that might put you at increased risk. And then I would be remiss if I didn't mention the substantial burden that this pandemic has placed on nursing homes. So even though nursing home patients account for less than 1% of the US population, about 40% of US deaths are occurring in nursing homes. And this number was actually higher earlier on in the pandemic. So that means about 2 out of every 5 patients that are passing away from COVID are nursing home patients. And this map shows the percentage of deaths in each state that are occurring in nursing homes. You'll see in Pennsylvania, more than half, 55% of deaths are occurring in nursing homes. Okay, and finally, just a word about the current treatments that we have for COVID-19. There has been a lot of research done since the beginning of the pandemic to identify treatments for COVID, as well as vaccines, which we're talking about tonight. For those who have mild disease, that is, they have symptoms that can be managed at home, the treatment is primarily supportive, meaning using over-the-counter medicines. If you have fever or muscle aches, you can use Tylenol. If you have a significant cough, you can use over-the-counter cough medicines. One strategy that might be helpful at home is self-proning. If you have severe cough or shortness of breath, self-proning means turning and lying on your stomach. This allows your lungs to open up a little bit more and allows you to get oxygen into your lungs a little bit better, and that may improve symptoms of cough and shortness of breath. There's been a lot of talk since the beginning of the pandemic about using other drugs at home, including hydroxychloroquine, steroids, azithromycin, aspirin. I would not recommend starting any of these drugs at home. Of course, if you're already taking aspirin or other blood thinners, you should continue taking them, but I wouldn't recommend starting them specifically for COVID-19. And then finally, more recently, we have a new drug available, and that is a monoclonal antibody. Some of you may remember when President Trump developed COVID-19, he received a special infusion. So those were monoclonal antibodies, and specifically those are used in patients who are at high risk for having severe disease, so those people who are older or who have underlying medical conditions. This is an infusion, and it's not widely available right now, but health centers are increasingly making it available for those who are high risk. And the purpose of that infusion is to prevent the disease from getting worse and prevent you from being hospitalized. Now, for those who have severe disease, that is, they're in the hospital, there are other drugs that are available. Remdesivir specifically works against the virus. And dexamethasone is a steroid that works against the reaction that your immune system has to the virus. And that's particularly important if you need oxygen in the hospital. We also use blood thinners to prevent clots in the hospital. And of course, there are a variety of other therapies that are being studied. And so you can consider enrolling in trials for some of those treatments, which haven't been proven yet, but are being studied in hospitals. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jerry Jacob, for the in-depth discussion about epidemiology. Now, I would like to introduce Dr. Suresh Pallikuttu, Assistant Professor of Research, Department of Microbiology and Immunology at University of Miami, Miller School of Medicine. Dr. Pallikuttu attained his PhD in immunology from Postgraduate Institute of Medical Education and Research, Chandigarh, India. He also received his postdoctorate from University of Miami, Miller School of Medicine. Dr. Pallikuttu is actively engaged in acting investigator at the Miami Center for AIDS Research and at Multi-Center AIDS Cohort Study, Women's Interagency HIV Study, Combined Cohort Studies. He's also the co-director of Miami Center of AIDS Research, HIV and Aging Scientific Working Group. His interest of research is mainly in mechanism of vaccine-induced immune responses in HIV and aging. It is my honor to introduce Dr. Suresh Pallikuttu, who will take us into the world of immunity.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Annie, for the introduction, and thanks to World Malayali Council Pennsylvania Province for inviting me to be part of this great discussion forum today. And I'm going to discuss a little bit about basic concept of vaccine immunology in the case of COVID-19, and also the recent advancement in the vaccine research or vaccine fields in COVID-19 infection. So before I discuss more about the vaccine part, I think we should discuss a little bit more about the infection and immune response, or your body's defense against this this infection. That is really required to know why we really need to develop a vaccine. So as Dr. Sinu mentioned in his talk about this virus and its basic way of infection and immune response, here we can see the virus enters into the body by binding to some receptors present on the surface of some cells. That receptors are called ACE2 receptors, angiotensin converting enzyme 2 receptors, and to which the virus can bind through a protein on the surface of the virus called spike protein. So the spike protein of the virus binds to this receptor, and through this interaction, virus can enter into the cells. Once it enters into the cells, it undergoes replication within the cells and create more and more virus, and thereby you develop the disease. So there are two potential approaches by which you can prevent this infection. One is to prevent the entry of the virus or block the entry of the virus, or you can block the binding of the virus to this receptor. And also another approach is to kill the virally infected cells. By these two approaches, your immune system or your body try to escape from this virus. So in order to do this, you really need to develop a host defense actually, and we call that host defense as immune response. So usually immune response develops in about 7 to 14 days after the infection. So it takes some time for body to recognize this pathogen and or this foreign substance and develop the immunity. So while developing immunity, first your immune cells, the cells present in your body called immune cells, or some of the immune cells will recognize this virus as a foreign substance, and that immune cells will take up this virus and present to other cells, and there is a coordinative effect called immune response occurs. And as an end product of the immune response, there are two things can happen. One is the production of antibodies by a specialized subset of cells called B cells, and that produce antibodies that can either neutralize the virus or it can prevent the virus binding to its receptors on the cell surface. Or the second type of cells called cytotoxic T cells, that cells can kill the virally infected cells. So you have the opportunity to neutralize the virus or kill the virally infected cells by developing the immunity. In addition, immune response has a classic features called memories, called immunologic memory, by which immune cells can, recognize this pathogen like COVID-19 virus when it comes at a later stage. So these memory immune cells will keep on patrolling throughout your immune system or your body, so that whenever there's a second time when the virus enters into your body, these memory cells will quickly act by producing the antibodies or killing the virally infected cells in the second time actually. So the basic question of all the vaccine concept is that can we develop an immune response before you get the infection actually? That is called a vaccination approach. It's called prophylactic or preventive approach. So what you do, you ask or you make your immune system ready to combat or to defend against this virus before that enters into your body. So you really need to develop these part of your immune response, like you need to develop antibodies, you need to develop the T cells that can kill the virally infected cells before the virus enters into your body, so that whenever you get this infection, your immune system is ready to fight against this disease. That is what we do by providing a vaccination approach in almost all the diseases actually. So with respect to COVID-19 vaccine development, according to WHO updates, there are 60 vaccines are in clinical development. That means they must be in either phase 1, phase 2, or phase 3 clinical trials. And almost 172 vaccine candidates are in preclinical development. That may be in the laboratory stage of developments or at small animal model studies or preclinical studies basically. So currently, just give you an update about the vaccine. There are 10 vaccines that are in the phase 3 trial, or some of them are already given to the population, like our Moderna and Pfizer vaccine, which is already obtained the emergency use authorization from FDA. So it is important for you to understand there are multiple different vaccines are available, but they're all they're all different with respect to the type of vaccine that they are actually. So we call them as vaccine platforms. So we have inactivated virus vaccines, viral vector-based vaccines available, and protein subunit vaccine and RNA-based vaccines actually. So what is inactivated vaccine? Inactivated virus vaccine means you take the COVID-19 virus and then you kill them or inactivated them by some chemical treatment or by heat actually. So that is called inactivated virus, and then you inject that virus to your body so that your body will recognize that those protein or which is already present on the virus and identify them as the pathogen, and then develop the antibodies against that actually. So these inactivated viruses are basically they never develop any disease, but your body can develop immune response against virus. There are 3 inactivated vaccine candidates are already available in this already. The second type of virus vaccine is called vector-based vaccine. So vector means it's a carrier actually. So what you're doing, you're adding some portion of the virus, the COVID virus, onto another virus, which is usually it's called an adenovirus vector. That's kind of a common cold, causing type of virus, but it is a non-replicating virus. So even if it enters into your body, it never causes a serious disease or anything to you basically. So a portion of this virus, like in case of COVID-19, what we usually introduce is a spike protein into this vectors, and then you inject this vector to your body so that your body will recognize this vector along with this the spike protein present on the COVID spike protein of the COVID-19 virus, and thereby your body will develop antibodies against this virus. There are 4 different vaccines are already in the phase 3 clinical trial. And the most famous are the AstraZeneca's or Oxford Covishield vaccine, and also the Janssen's vaccine also use the same approach. And the third type of vaccine is called a protein subunit vaccine. So that means you are not asking your body to generate anything from the virus, but rather your laboratory developed viral protein is mixed with any other immune enhancing component called adjuvant, and then inject that to you so that also can induce the immune response. And the fourth type of vaccine is much debated or much discussed vaccine platform called RNA-based vaccine. And here we already have 2 mRNA-based vaccine which got emergency use authorization from FDA and are already given to general public. Started giving to general public. So I'll discuss a little bit more about this RNA-based vaccine in my next slide. But usually, almost all these vaccines require 2 doses. Why they require 2 doses? Because the first dose is called prime dose. Prime dose means you are priming your immune system. You are preparing your immune system to generate, to develop your immune response. And then you are giving a second dose that's called a booster dose. You usually give 3 to 4 weeks after the first dose, and that booster dose will further enhance your immunity because the priming will generate some sort of memory. Immunologic memory response that we discussed in our previous slide, and that boosting will further enhance the response by producing more and more antibodies or more, the killer T cells from your body. So all these vaccines, most of this vaccine goes a prime boost strategy, and except for the Janssen and AstraZeneca, this viral vector-based platform can still go for a single dose vaccination strategy here. So coming to RNA vaccine, so this is the much debated vaccine in these days, and we know that Moderna and Pfizer has got this platform. So what is RNA vaccine actually? So basically, you are taking a small portion of the viral RNA called messenger RNA. So that is the RNA which is further translated or differentiated into proteins actually. So you take the messenger RNA of the spike messenger RNA of the COVID-19, and then you encapsulated that using some sort of lipids. So the lipids helps to protect this RNA, providing them as a shield. So we call them as a liposomes or a nanoparticle basically. And then when you inject this to the body, that lipid will bind onto the cell membrane, and that releases the RNA to the cell. So that then this RNA will then generate from this RNA, your cell will produce the viral protein actually. So viral RNA enters into your cell, so your cell will produce viral proteins using the cellular machinery of protein generation actually. So these proteins are then produced and released so that your immune system will find this as a new protein or it's a foreign substance, and that develops antibody against this approach. So so Moderna and Pfizer, they both use the same platform called mRNA-based vaccine. And the difference is that both of them use again the spike protein. As I mentioned to you in my first slide, that spike is the one which the virus used to bind to your cell, and that's if you can generate antibodies against spike, so that can block the entry or binding of the virus to the ACE2 receptors actually. So both of them use spike protein as their antigen, so that helps to generate antibody against spike protein. And you see the clinical trial, phase 3 clinical trial results shows that both vaccines showed a mild symptoms, like the usual symptom that you expect from this type of simple vaccination. And the efficacy is very good. With Pfizer got a 95% efficiency, and Moderna's got 94.1% efficiency. That means it's a very good and efficient vaccines. And the time between doses, like prime boost, is 21 days for Moderna, Pfizer, and 28 days for the Moderna. And it is advisable to use 16 or older for Pfizer and 18 or older for the Moderna vaccine. So it's even safer for even the young people. And the only difference is that storage condition, that is because of the vaccine, depends on the vaccine formulation. The Pfizer required a much high intense cold temperature with a minus 70 degree, while Moderna can work even with a minus 20 degree Celsius. So as we discussed, now the question is, why do we need a vaccine actually? So the simple answer is to get rid of the virus. An infection causes a highly transmissible disease by the respiratory route and can easily be very serious and complicated. So, and the problem is it can be transmitted by both people who have symptoms and, more importantly, people who might not even know they have COVID-19 because they are either asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic. That means pre-symptomatic means those who have the disease before they develop the symptoms. Second, vaccine can induce herd immunity. So herd immunity is where the majority of the community is protected and makes the virus less likely to spread. I'll discuss that in my next slide. So development of herd immunity is unlikely unless we are able to vaccinate 70% of the population. So you need, in order to generate a herd immunity, we discussed, many thoughts came about herd immunity earlier by developing herd immunity through allowing the people to get more and more infected. But the problem is that you need to infect almost 70% of the population to really generate the herd immunity. But by vaccinating, if you can do a 70% the population get vaccinated, it is believed that you can really generate the herd immunity. And the other problem is failure to vaccinate the majority of the population would cause even more negative economic and human impact on our society and the world that it has already caused actually. So what is herd immunity? So it's a simple cartoon, and I can clearly explain you what exactly the herd immunity. So here you can see that orange is an infected person, and blue are a vaccinated a person with an antibody response or immune person, and gray are the non-immune or non-infected people actually. So if you vaccinate a very few people actually, like very few individuals, what happens? You see a vaccine-induced people with the vaccine-induced antibody response as the blue here, but there are many more non-infected, non-vaccinated people, so that the infected person can easily spread the disease to other people, and so that it can really spread to the entire community. But if you vaccinate around 70% population, or if a lot of people are already immune against this disease, what happens? You can see within your, you see many more blue in this picture. With many of them are showed immunity against this COVID-19, but there are few which are not taken any vaccine or not infected, and we have again here this orange infected person here, but he can spread the disease to another infected person close to him. But it cannot do it in those who are in the entire society, because they are covered by many other immune people, so they cannot infect this nearby immune people, those who are already vaccinated and those who are immune to this disease. So that is what we call herd immunity. That's the way we can generate herd immunity. So if you reach around 70% vaccination in the population, you can really generate the herd immunity, so the remaining 30% can be protected from this disease. So just to conclude, what next? So now, while the vaccine is likely to start stimulating antibodies soon after the injection, that we know, but we don't know when the antibodies will be fully protective, and we don't know how long they will last and how much antibody is required to protect a person. So therefore, please continue wearing a mask, maintaining physical distancing, and practicing good hand hygiene even after getting the vaccine, until we resolve all these mysteries. Thank you for listening, and I'll be happy to be part of this discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Suresh Pallikuttu, for that great information on vaccine immunology. And I'm sure most of us have got a good sense of why it is important that we need to get vaccinated. Moving on, next I would like to introduce Dr. Anuradha Mukherjee. Dr. Anuradha Mukherjee serves as a hospitalist in the Department of Internal Medicine at Cooper University Hospital, Camden, New Jersey. She's an associate professor at Cooper Medical School of Rowan University. And Dr. Mukherjee completed her medical degree at Armed Forces Medical College, Pune, India, and her residency at George Washington University Hospital, Washington, D.C. She's very involved in medical student education and residency training. She has been taking care of COVID-19 patients and is interested in COVID-19 vaccine program and distribution. It is my pleasure and honor to welcome Dr. Anuradha Mukherjee to present on COVID-19 vaccine, allergy, and possible reactions. Dr. Mukherjee.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Anu Mukherjee, and I'm going to be talking to you today about the vaccination for the COVID disease, the fears which exist inside our minds, the hesitancy that we all have, but the actual facts that lead us forwards. So as we know the story of Edward Jenner many, many years back, when he saw his dairy maid, the cowpox that she had, he discovered the vaccination process. Vacca, in fact, means cow. The cowpox, which was a disease much lesser in severity than the smallpox, and he injected that into his gardener's son. And lo and behold, the disease symptoms that he had were much lesser. And he converted that cowpox disease into something so valuable that he revved up the immune system and helped the public going forwards to be immune of that smallpox disease. So here we are at the juncture today, looking back at historical perspectives, looking at the polio vaccination, the oral polio, where lines used to be formed outside schools and public places to just get that spoonful of sugar, as it was called, the oral polio vaccine, which eliminated most of the disease of polio. by the Salk and the Sabin. So we stand over here a little fearful, but if we can trust that public system of ours and have that solidarity between us, we will be able to lead on and march on through this disease process as well. So the COVID-19 vaccine is here for all of us to go in a stepwise approach and receive it. And every state has said, the Department of Health has said, that this vaccine is indeed safe. We are confident that the ones by Pfizer and Moderna have all the critical tools in ending this pandemic. It has been tried, it has been tested, and it is highly effective. So safety has been the top priority during the development of this vaccine. These vaccines have gone through clinical trials to test safety and effectiveness and has almost reached 95%, which is unheard of. Most of the vaccinations that we have had so far have somewhere between 50 and 60% efficacy. And that would have been sufficient, but we've reached a 90 to 95%, which is really unbelievable. The FDA, as we all know, has rigorous standards for these vaccine developers. And this testing process for the vaccine did not skip any steps. The vaccination developers conducted the steps simultaneously, and that's why we were able to generate this in record time. So the EUA, which is the emergency use authorization, which was given for this vaccine developers, still met all the standards for the safety and the effectiveness. Now, if there are any side effects, we will continue to monitor them for any of these problematic ones, but they're so small and far between that they're almost minimal. So what are the side effects of COVID-19 vaccine? Typically, most of them last for the first day or two, so 24 to 48 hours, and they're so minimal. Pain at injection site, a low-grade fever, muscle aches. We get all these when we get our flu shots. We never seem to complain. And yet here we are a little hesitant for all these small, minimal side effects. It is here where we have to weigh the risk of having the disease and large-scale benefit that we can get with the vaccination. The normal response to vaccines, so if you are going to get any of those symptoms, I would say, yes, that's a great thing that your body was able to build an immune system to respond to this vaccine. So maybe after the second dose, this might be a little higher. The chances of you having those side effects after the second shot, which is 3 weeks in that Pfizer and 4 weeks in the Moderna vaccine, that second shot might give you a little better response to the immune system. And therefore your body has revved up your immune cells. And again, a good sign, if you get that small fever, that pain in that injection site, consider yourself as valuable. It's a valuable tool that you have built up inside your body. The New England Journal did come up with some sort of allergic reactions, which are studies is still in progress, but these allergic reactions, once again, were small and far between. They were mostly immediate, having to this lipid nanoparticle, which they've used, called the PEG molecule, as that mRNA inserted. Once again, the allergic reactions are small and far between. The delayed reactions, which can stay for a little bit longer, like urticaria, a little scratching, or serum sickness, are almost negligible, but we'll have to keep studying them as we go forwards. If you were to get any of even the smaller reactions, when I went for my vaccine, I had to stay there for 15 minutes. If you had any allergy from the past, allergic response from the past, you were carrying your EpiPen or anything, you would be made to sit in another room for 45 minutes. Somebody would be observing you. All of us got this sheet of paper called the VAERS system, which is the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. This is always given to patients, to all of us basically, and it's a national reporting data system. So if you do get any of these adverse effects, you have a 1-800 number that you can trustfully reach very fast. There's also a smartphone app that is now being built called the vSafe, and this application is designed for the individual level. So it'll remind you when your next vaccine doses, the second dose, which comes 3 weeks later for Pfizer, and 4 weeks later for Moderna, it reminds you to go and get that second dose. It's important that you get that second dose because that's when you build up that full 95% of that efficacy of that vaccine. So the smartphone application actually tracks and manages all your side effects if you have any of those. So once again, something that you can keep in your pocket and walk around. So once again, my friends, we've reached the temple of Vaccinia. What Edward Jenner taught us that time is to build that trust inside communities, inside families, share information. This is something that we can help to eliminate this disease process. So we have to be in this together and enter the temple of Vaccinia. I thank you very much for being here with us, and thank you for your understanding. Please bring your family members, your friends, your loved ones, your elders, your younger ones. When that right time comes for you to stand in line, be confident and go forwards with that arm, which is there for you to be getting vaccinated and then eliminate this disease from this planet. Thank you very much and have a lovely evening ahead. We are open for questions as always. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Mukherjee, for the insightful and inspiring information you have shared in reference to allergy and reactions. The next speaker is Dr. Nisha Nigel. Dr. Nigel is an internist and endocrinologist working as assistant professor and staff physician at Northern Ontario School of Medicine, Canada. She has a keen interest in knowledge translation and has won the prestigious PSI Graham Knowledge Translation Award. Dr. Nigel has had advanced training in clinical epidemiology and research from University of Toronto. Her research is focused on metabolic bone disease and thyroid nodules. She has won several awards, including Young Investigator Award from Endocrine Society, USA. It is my pleasure and privilege to commence upon Dr. Nigel to discuss about the special set of population like pregnant population, people with autoimmune diseases and disorders, and diabetic population, and how the vaccine works or might react on this special group. Dr. Nigel, please take it away.
Hi, everyone. I will be highlighting on the COVID vaccine use in people with underlying medical conditions or other special scenarios. So moving on to special subgroups, this is what I will be focusing on. Questions like, can we use the mRNA vaccine in immunocompromised people or pregnant women, women who are breastfeeding? How about using mRNA vaccine in children and also in older people and people of color and other minority groups? So whatever data I'm going to discuss is based on information extracted from the following institutions and research organizations. So a brief introduction of the trial. So we will be discussing data from these two landmark trials, Pfizer and Moderna trials in their vaccines. So if you look here on the bottom part of the slide, so we can notice that both trials began in July. The Pfizer trial was a multinational trial involving participants across USA, Germany, Turkey, South Africa, Brazil, and Argentina. Moderna trial was conducted mainly in the United States. In the Moderna trial, 47% of participants were female, 25% of these people were 65 years or older, and they did include people with other medical conditions that predispose them to have high risk of COVID, for example, diabetes or certain other autoimmune diseases or high risk population. So 17% of the trial participants below 65 age and had these other associated medical conditions. And a majority were white people, Caucasians, but they did also include Black, African Americans, Asians, as well as Hispanics that constituted 21% of the trial population. And both vaccines are manufactured in Belgium. And I'm not getting into the details, so we are all familiar. The doses are 2 to 3 weeks apart, as well as the age group included in the Moderna trial was age greater than 18. And in the Pfizer trial, they did include folks between 12 to 18%. Efficacy was already discussed. So this was the diversity and the demographic data from the Pfizer trial. And as I mentioned, it was an international trial. There were 5 to 6% of Asians in these trials, African Americans, possibly 10%, Hispanics up to 26%. And then age group, again, 12 to 15-year-olds, around 1,000 of those adolescents were, kids and adolescents were in the trial. Age 16 to 17, 738. and also age 18 to 15, 25,000, and the rest were older than 56, a huge number of trial participants. So how can we recommend vaccine for immunocompromised patients? Yes, there is a recommendation to support the use of these vaccines in this population who, unless there is another contraindication for vaccine use. So obviously we'll have to have a conversation about the unknown effects, which are extremely rare, effectiveness and potential for reduced immune response. And coming to pregnant women, what is known? We do know that an unvaccinated pregnant woman remains at high risk of COVID infection, and they're likely to get more severe complications of COVID and also adverse pregnancy outcome, and sometimes even preterm birth and hospitalization. So there is risk to maternal and fetal health. The baby is also likely to be affected. So also we do know a lot of these young folks are a part of the working force. So many of them are healthcare workers, frontline essential workers. So we have to assess their risk based on the community spread and then decide based on individual risk. So we do know that symptomatic pregnant women are at increased risk of more severe illness, and up to 10% will require hospitalization if they contract COVID during pregnancy, and up to 2 to 4% of pregnant women might require hospitalization and ICU stay. So that's a big concern. There's the general recommendation or suggestion is that in the absence of evidence and also in the presence of and there is no documented risk for fetal harm, is generally not sufficient to deny pregnant women from accessing the vaccine. So we have to individualize the risk benefit and then decide about vaccinating pregnant women. So both trials, there were few pregnancies, both Moderna and Pfizer. No adverse events were reported in that subgroup, although the number was very small. And Moderna has done animal studies in rats showing safety profile of their vaccine in pregnant women. And of course, we also have to understand that pregnant women, if they get COVID, especially when they're older than 35 with other comorbid conditions, obesity, pre-existing diabetes, heart disease, etc., have a high risk of severe disease and hospitalization. So even though it has not been tested exclusively in pregnant or breastfeeding women, we think that it is safe to be used. That's what most of the pregnancy and obstetric associations now recommend. And we also think that based on scientific evidence, these vaccines do not affect fertility and do not affect your chance of getting pregnant, both in men and women. So there is no concern of sterility in men who take this vaccine. So we do see a lot of false reports on social media, which have been dismissed by scientific authorities. There's absolutely no risk of this vaccine causing risk to the fetus or causing infertility or sterility. So after a person is vaccinated, the body produces a spike protein, which we just discussed, and absolutely false reports circulating on social media. So we should be aware that this protein is not the same as any involved in the formation of placenta. So the pregnant women who were in the Pfizer trial, 12 were in the vaccine and 12 in the placebo arm, 11 in the placebo arm, and reported no adverse effects. And so we have seen a very enthusiastic participation by healthcare workers and physicians across various states of United States coming forward to get the vaccine despite being pregnant. So that we know about the safety profile of these vaccines, and you can access more information from these association websites. Again, all the major women's health organizations are pushing for using these vaccines in pregnant women where it is appropriate. Okay, so I'm going to skip that. So again, for individuals planning a pregnancy, COVID vaccination CD should be completed before pregnancy is being planned. And then if you got the vaccine and you discover that you are pregnant, there's no need to terminate the pregnancy. So that recommendation is already there. And again, in the Moderna trial, they did separate experiments in rats and found no vaccine-related adverse effects on female fertility or fetal development or postnatal development. That's after the fetus is born. So absolutely no concern based on animal studies. So this is very reassuring. Okay, and you don't need to do pregnancy testing before going for vaccination. And also people who are trying to get pregnant do not need to avoid vaccination. Okay, so I'll skip that. Now coming to children, children were not included in the trial. Pfizer trial only included older adults greater than 16, but 12 to 16 age group is still being tried, and we are waiting for the data. And in the Moderna trial, age cutoff was 18. So currently, there's no recommendation to use these vaccines in these age groups who are below 16 or 18. So we'll get more data soon, probably in the next 4 to 6 months. And we do know that children often need a different dose than adults and may show stronger immune reactions. Now, should children get the vaccine? Right now, they are not a priority, but in future, there will be recommendations towards using vaccinations in children. Currently, of course, the focus is more on adults. Children, mainly because the children are less likely to develop severe disease or less likely to die from COVID. But having said that, they are at risk of multi-system inflammatory disease, which can be very severe. And they are important transmitters of COVID disease in the community, and vaccinating them with a vaccine might help to reduce the transmission. So that might be an important factor in controlling the pandemic. And finally, also, if you know that we have a safe vaccine in children, parents will be more confident towards opening up schools, and that will help with the educational purpose. So as I mentioned, the other authorized age group is 16 and 18 respectively. And older people, yes, trials did include older people, and efficacy was very similar to the younger age group, although the subset of patients, the sample size was very small. Yes, the data looked very promising. And in fact, the older patients experienced lighter reactions like headache, flu, or body reaction. So again, even in the Moderna trial, a similar population across all age groups were included, coming to seniors. So again, next question is, have we tested these vaccines in people of color and other minority groups? Yes, African Americans and Hispanics, although the Asian proportion was considerably small, so probably 4 to 5%. Cancer also, there were patients with cancer who got into the trial. In the Moderna trial, patients with certain type of skin cancer were allowed to participate in the trial. Pfizer, they did exclude anybody with any history of cancer, recent cancer. But then all the cancer associations are now advocating for using these vaccines in people who have had cancer only because they have high risk of getting severe COVID disease and high risk of dying. So in general, the recommendation is to prioritize and administer vaccine in patients who have cancer, but I'm not getting into the individual scenarios, but the general recommendation is to use it. That is the recommendation across the world, US, Australia, UK, Canada. So these are high prioritized groups to receive vaccines. And similarly, patients with autoimmune conditions, again, in the trials, there were patients with these diseases. In the trials, they were not excluded and no imbalance was observed in the occurrence of symptoms. So that is reassuring. And again, these are rare neurological conditions, including Guillain-Barré syndrome. We do think that these are people with prior history might be monitored, and these are extremely rare side effects. Again, they can be used. And also there was a concern about Bell's palsy and a lot of media reports about those 4 cases being reported. Again, FDA thinks it's not an added risk. The media reports, of course, were exaggerated. So again, the post-authorization surveillance is underway. And even in people with prior history of Bell's palsy, it is recommended to go for the vaccination. So I would like to conclude at this point by thanking all of you for attending the session, and also special thanks to all the scientists behind vaccine development, healthcare workers, essential workers, and also the thousands of clinical trial volunteers. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nigel, for sharing your insight on vaccination to our special our subgroups of population, and that was great information. And as you have seen, all our scientists and physicians in this panels, they have shared a great information from the very beginning of the corona infection to the emergence of vaccine. Now it's time for our panelists to answer some of your questions. So for next, I would like to invite Dr. Annie Abraham to moderate the Q&A session. If you have any questions, please feel free to write your questions in the chat box. Ms. Annie Abraham, Dr. Annie Abraham. You're on mute, Annie.
That was a lot of information. All this information will be available. It's on Facebook Live and it's going to be on YouTube. If you want to go back and review, you're going to know what they were talking about. Most of the questions were covered during the topics. As we said, we tried to answer most of the frequently asked questions, but I still had some questions came. One was, would these vaccines going to be a part of my regular life, like flu vaccine, or is it going to be a one-time deal?
I think that's a very good question. Maybe I can answer that part because so we need to do more studies to know the longevity of this response now, because you need to follow these vaccine recipients for a long time and see how long does this vaccine response last. So there's no definitive information about the durability of the response now because it just started. So we'll be doing that. And based on there's a general consensus, based on the nature of the immune response and the nature of the antibody, like prime boost vaccination strategy, maybe at least 1 year for sure, and it may be more. So we really need to wait and see, how long this antibody response lasts. And in case if it is a short, maybe a 1 year durable response, then you may need to go for a booster dose vaccination maybe every year. Or if it is a long durable response, then you can you may be protected for many more years. So we really don't know that part. More studies are required for that.
Thank you. Does this vaccine have any side reaction with people with allergies, food allergies?
Oh, hi, Annie. I can take that question. This is Nisha. So this has been widely discussed, and in general, even in people with history of anaphylaxis, they just recommend people to be monitored probably for half an hour, but the maximum risk of anaphylaxis that someone mentioned is within like 4 hours, and it's usually immediate. So actually if you've had a food allergy, it's not a contraindication. You can still go ahead and discuss with your family doctor, and then you can still get vaccinated. But you will need to be monitored, and you should be carrying EpiPen just in case. And again, the risk of anaphylaxis also is like 1 in 100,000 or so. It's extremely rare.
Okay, thank you. Ivermectin and doxycycline combination has been used in India. Can you comment on this, anybody?
Yeah, I can take that question. So for those who don't know, ivermectin is a drug that has been used for scabies and for lice and for a variety of other infectious diseases. And doxycycline is a common antibiotic. And there's been a lot of interest in these agents for COVID. I would still consider these very much experimental agents. I think there's some studies and some reasons to think it might work. I think we also have some reasons to think it may not work. And so I think it's really important that we have better designed studies to show that it both is helpful and also that it's safe and that it doesn't cause harm. So there are currently good studies, randomized controlled trials that are ongoing, and we should have the results of those trials at some point to really help guide our decision there. So for the moment, I would not recommend it on a routine basis unless you're part of a trial. And I would rather rely on the drugs that we know do have efficacy, including remdesivir and dexamethasone.
I think Dr. Nigel already answered this question in her recent slide. Can people diagnosed with the GBS get this vaccine? And the recommendation is yes, correct?
Yes, the CDC recommendation is, yeah, you've had GBS, you can still go ahead and get this vaccine. And of course, as I mentioned, as we go along, millions of people are getting vaccinated. So you will definitely see some of these rare side effects. So again, extremely very low incidence. And the data go by these numbers. So let's say if you vaccinate 10 million people over the following 2 months, we can expect, some of these are not causal associations, but just correlation. So you might see around 4,000 people having a heart attack within that 2 months of vaccinating 10 million people. Out of these, 3,000 people might get a stroke, 9,000 people will get a new diagnosis of cancer, 60 people will have a new diagnosis of multiple sclerosis, and even 14,000 people amongst these vaccinated will die due to various other causes. So there's no way we can attribute all those conditions to the vaccine. So these are all extremely rare possibilities with no significant causal association, but the neurological associations have been discussed before in the context of other vaccine use as well.
Dr. Suresh, you talked about different types of vaccines available. Which one is recommended? The DNA viruses or mRNA vaccines?
I would recommend the first available vaccine actually.
Okay.
So, that should be the right answer for that.
Okay. And usually vaccine development and approval process takes about 10 years. COVID vaccines are approved emergently in less than 1 year. As an end user, are these vaccines safe?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So far, the current information that we have, especially the only question is about the mRNA vaccines. That's the one which is like mRNA or DNA-based vaccine. We are more concerned about its safety. But what I can say, consider the nature of the vaccine in mRNA vaccine versus other vaccine. What I feel as an immunologist, or this mRNA is something like you are really giving an information to your cells to straight away produce the protein. But in a DNA type of vaccine means your DNA will. So I saw a question here about the how is it going to bind with your cells, or is it going to do something with your genetic makeup? So I cannot say, we don't have a definitive answer, but the probability is that no, because this RNA is not getting integrated with your DNA at all during the whole process. It straight away get into your cells, and then straight away produce the protein through the protein producing machinery. So there is no integration to your DNA. So you should be I can say you should be always safe. But again, one possibility is that if you have a co-infection with some type of other viruses called retrovirus or something like an HIV or something like a retrovirus, which if you have a co-infection, we don't know how this retrovirus reverse transcriptase enzyme is really working on this mRNA or not. That type of deep questions are still remaining, but right now we can say they are safer actually.
Okay. Are there any more questions?
Dr. Annie, there are a lot of questions on the chat box. Maybe our MCs can.
I've been sending this to the group.
Okay, thank you.
So I can maybe just take one of the questions. There was a question about vaccinating people who have already had COVID-19 and whether or not they need to wait a certain period after infection. So people who have previously had COVID can receive the vaccine, and actually know several people who have had COVID who have received it. You are likely immune for at least 90 days after the infection. So while it's reasonable to wait as well for a couple months, there's certainly no contraindication, and you can go ahead and receive it even if you've had COVID.
I think there's a question on ivermectin. I guess Dr. Jerry Jacob can also answer this. But yeah, that's a compound showing some promise in the some observational studies so far, and nobody has really done a controlled study to assess its efficacy and also the side effects. So at this point we don't, it's too early to say that is good or bad, but it has some potential at the moment. But Dr. Jerry, do you want to elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, I think I covered it in an earlier question, and I agree. I think we just need better, well-designed trials, which are ongoing right now, and we should have results at some point to help us know whether it's really effective and whether it's safe.
There is a question about vaccines in severe eczema cases. Also, how long do you think this vaccine will be available for the general public?
I guess the only absolute contraindication for the vaccine use is an allergy to the vaccine component, allergy or anaphylaxis, a known anaphylaxis. And the vaccine component, as someone discussed, in example for the Pfizer vaccine and the PEG component, and then other components have been mentioned on the CDC website. So otherwise, none of these conditions are absolute contraindications. But since we mentioned one disease condition, I can also see a question on autoimmune diseases and rheumatoid arthritis. So there are guidelines from rheumatological societies saying that everybody older than 70 naturally are at high risk. And then people with rheumatoid arthritis, if they are taking disease-modifying drugs or methotrexate, that doesn't put them at high risk for severe disease, but if they're older and if they have other risk factors and they're also taking prednisone for rheumatoid arthritis, that naturally predisposes them to higher risk. So vaccination is definitely recommended. Younger individuals on other biological drugs like infliximab, so that's a different conversation. So that will differ based on the disease activity and things like that. But again, it's not an absolute contraindication, but the needle will have to be timed based according to the infusion timing and all that.
I think there was a question about alternative medicine, and I don't think we have enough data to work on that one for alternative medicine. But I know in the Ayurvedic sense, they talk about this ashwagandha, which kind of boosts the immunity, and more for preventative measures rather than for curative measures at this point in time. So I don't think there are enough studies on that. As far as the vaccines are concerned, which one to take, I would say the first one is the best one, whichever you take, but just remember which one you've taken, because you do need the booster dose. So when you go for the second time, you have to know which one you've taken for the first time. Of course, this is all mentioned when you actually take it. It's all in the registry as such, but just for your personal sake, you've got to know which one you've taken. So down the road, keep that little logbook with you. It'll be helpful.
Okay, there's one question. Will the Pfizer and Moderna COVID-19 vaccines be effective against the new strain? That's a good question everybody is wondering about. And at the moment, we can say for sure that that's not of a major concern, because none of these vaccines actually do depend on minute amino acid sequence where the variants change. So in general, these vaccines produce a comprehensive immune response against the total protein or a big chunk of it. So at this point, it's very unlikely that any of these new variants have any effect to the Pfizer or Moderna vaccines. And there are some studies coming up, though not peer-reviewed yet, showing that the Pfizer vaccine is at least capable of still recognizing and producing antibodies against it. So that's not a concern at the moment.
I also see a question about whether a person testing positive for COVID can take the vaccine. So I'm not sure if it's differentiating between asymptomatic versus symptomatic. I just recently saw an update saying that if you have documented COVID infection, better not to get the vaccine immediately, mainly because you're likely to infect people, healthcare workers working at the vaccine facility. So that is one big concern. And if you have symptoms, and then the general recommendation is to wait for 3 months, especially if you have received other treatment, convalescent plasma or other medications. But in general, the consensus is 90 days. But again, I think in the UK, and sometimes they say 10 days, probably maybe because this is related to healthcare workers. But the standard recommendation in the US is wait for 90 days.
There's another question. What if I miss my 21-day or 28-day period for the second dose?
That's okay. Just go and get it whenever you remember it. Just go for it. Don't have to worry about those dates. Yeah.
Try to not miss it, actually.
Yeah. And as for the COVID patients in my hospital, I noticed that the 90-day period is the right number to say, but many of them are actually receiving it even after a month or two of COVID. So they're not really waiting for that 3-month mark, because these are healthcare workers which are in the front line. And so as long as they really want it, I think it's coming at a personal level as such.
I think there was also a question about post-marketing surveillance of these vaccines. So you can be assured that CDC has a very robust system of data monitoring. They are also monitoring the safety using various sources. And someone also mentioned about the vaccine safety data link. There are apps, there are other projects supported by the CDC and veterans, and the data is being collected from everywhere. And even the clinical trial, the participants are being monitored for up to 2 years. So we will get, this is called post-marketing surveillance. We will get really good safety data, and it is being monitored very thoroughly.
Yeah, so someone asked when we can expect to get the vaccine. So what's the answer? Like when we can expect to get the vaccine?
Yeah, that's up to the state, how fast they deal with it. We cannot really answer that because it involves a lot of other logistics behind that.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to Pennsylvania. I mean, there are, everyone may have heard, there are phases to the distribution, and phase 1A has been healthcare workers as well as patients in nursing homes because they're the highest risk. And then phase 1B will be patients age 75 or older, as well as other frontline workers, including police and firefighters and grocery workers and teachers. And then phase 1C will be 65 to 74, as well as those with chronic medical conditions. So as we've already mentioned, I think it depends on the state and how quickly they get vaccine out. But I know in Philadelphia, there are tentative plans to move to phase 1B in February. So assuming the supply comes in at a regular pace, that will hopefully be the case.
Yeah, I see another question here. If we take one dose here, can we take next dose in different country of the Pfizer vaccine? Yes, of course, you can take.
There's another question. Can a person tested positive for COVID take this vaccine? Did anyone answer that?
Yes,
no, right?
we just discussed that.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I missed that. Okay.
And the other question was, is it possible to get COVID from the vaccination? Absolutely no. There are a lot of anecdotal reports of someone dying after day 5 of vaccine, or getting fever and other symptoms. Probably the exposure was prior to the vaccine administration, so we cannot link that to the vaccine administration. There's absolutely no scientific rationale behind those sort of associations. What happens is, in order to get the full immune response, we only see 50 to 60% efficacy after the first dose, and the immune response, there is a latency period before the vaccine actually kicks in. So it's probably 5 to 7 days. And then you get full 90% efficacy after the second dose. And also keep in mind that the efficacy might be slightly lower in the real world. The clinical trial settings are slightly different. So we might not see 90% efficacy in the real world. So again, the vaccination doesn't give you infection. And also there was a question about latent autoimmune response. Basically, these are all theoretical concerns because it's an mRNA vaccine. There's some discussion about very delayed autoimmune triggers that are more of like a theoretical possibility. Highly unlikely that this will be proven. But again, this is something that has been discussed in the scientific world, but no big concerns as of now. But mind you, having a viral infection itself is a very big trigger for autoimmune disease. In my practice, I'm a diabetes specialist. We see viral infections triggering autoimmune diabetes, where people end up taking insulin lifelong. So that is well known even after viral infection, possibly even long COVID, we might see long-term autoimmune diseases like Hashimoto's thyroiditis or other problems. Probably we will soon know more about that.
Analyst, I think I sent a couple more questions in the group, at least the last one or two. If you can address, that will be great.
Yeah, there was one about when can we expect normalcy? That's a difficult question. When can we go back to the near normal state? But the difference between efficacy, which is in a controlled setting when the vaccine developers do it, they've reached a 90 to 95%. But what we need is actually effectiveness, not just the efficacy. The effectiveness happens when we as a society kind of go and get our arm vaccinated. There's no need to make a vaccine up till that whole process gets converted into the vaccination process. So for us to kind of take it back to the normal stage, I think the more advocacy that we have between our family members within our society to say that we want to be more than that 70% herd immunity. We want to go towards 85%, not stay in that 15% and hope for the best that somebody else will give us that herd immunity. So I think most of us need to march on. Most of us who can understand this process and feel that it's safe need to advocate for others.
So one more question, I would like to answer this because it's an endocrine question about a person with primary aldosteronism and SVT or tachycardia, where the heart is beating fast, take the vaccine. Absolutely no issues in someone with primary aldosteronism taking the vaccine, not a problem. But mind you, a lot of normal people are also getting vasovagal attack because of anxiety and fear at the time of vaccine administration. So, we see reports of patients or people fainting and having syncopal attacks. That's all all because of anxiety. This is very well documented in young folks as well. So, if you are known to have those episodes, maybe talk to your primary care physician, and maybe it's always good to take an anxiolytic or take some pre-medication. It might help, but that should not prevent you from getting the vaccine. So it's those vasovagal you should keep in mind. You might faint and take a fall or something.
Did you see that question? Likelihood of latent autoimmune thing?
Yes, we covered it. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
There was a question about what stops the body from continuing to produce the spike protein after getting an mRNA vaccine. So the mRNA actually breaks down quickly after it enters the body and after it makes the protein, so that it's no longer there to make the protein. This is part of the reason that there's such strict storage requirements around using ultra-frozen storage, and it's why the storage is monitored so closely. So the mRNA is gone soon after it's injected into the body.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Krishna, you're injecting a definitive amount of RNA, and your body is not, producing additional amount of RNA, because just going into the translation process, and you're getting the protein produced actually. So
there is one question about staggering the second dose and use the available dose to the most of the population, and you guys have any input on that one?
Yeah, so to me, that's my maybe others can also add. So what I think, even there's a delay in giving the second dose, it's not a bad idea, because you still can do this prime boost vaccination strategy up to 3 to 4 months after priming also may boost your response. But the only thing that Dr. Nisha mentioned, that 60 to 65% efficacy after primary and a prime dose as a first dose of vaccination. That's the one concern. If you delay further, you really need to get a 95% efficacy. You really need to get your boost dose as soon as possible, like 3 to 4 weeks window.
So for children, there was a question about when can we expect a vaccination for kids. So the Pfizer trial is going to recruit more children with 12 years or older, but I think there is some recommendation of testing this in a subgroup of age 9 or older. So I guess we will only get that data by summer or maybe fall. It's going to take a while.
And yes, you still have to continue wearing a mask, even if you get vaccinated. So do not stop that process, please. So continue your 6 feet apart and wearing the mask, even when you're vaccinated.
Yeah, question I see from someone from Dubai, that because we have a 3 vaccine here, and if I take any one, I have to take the same next time, right? Yes, you have to go for the same vaccine. It's better to go for the same vaccine. And what about the mutation? Because I think we covered the mutation question, right?
Yes, we did.
Talk about that, yeah. Another question, when can I stop wearing a mask and avoiding close contact with others after I have been vaccinated?
And we just covered that.
Yeah,
I guess we had to wait for the herd immunity, like 70% of the people who should be vaccinated, at least, for this to happen, right?
Yeah.
Any other questions that we missed?
I think we covered most of them.
I have one. John Campbell. Is there any difference between the antibody that you develop from the infection and the vaccine?
Yes, only one difference. When you get an infection, you're getting the whole. Your immune system is exposed to the whole virus actually. So you may have antibody response to multiple different components of the virus after your infection. But when you vaccinate with a specific protein such as spike protein, so you will develop only antibody response against that spike protein. So that's the difference. But you need to have response to spike protein, because that's a response which can prevent the entry of the virus to your cells. So that's good enough to protect you.
Thank you.
Nisha, there was a question someone asked me. There was some suggestion about embryos used. You said it was not used, correct?
No, absolutely.
Okay.
No. And I also see a question about someone getting just one dose. So that is some discussion now happening among scientists that, what if you had COVID or you had received plasma or things like that? So maybe in those people, we might get away with using one dose of the vaccine. So that's an interesting and evolving concept. But otherwise, based on FDA approved clinical trial data, you have to get 2 vaccines in order to get full efficacy. So that recommendation is not going to change. The interval might change.
What is the type of controversial vaccines in India going on? Is it similar to Pfizer or something different?
I think the one in India is AstraZeneca and the Oxford vaccine, which is together. So, and they have another one called the COVAX. So, on a slightly, they have 2 of them. So, but not the ones that we have over here.
But what type of, is it similar to the one what we have in US or different type?
It's based on adenoviruses. So they pretty much use a virus, a different type of virus, to get the DNA to make the spike protein inside our body. Unlike the RNA we supply in Pfizer or Moderna vaccines.
Yeah, and that vaccine is in phase 3 trial in US right now, that adenovirus-based AstraZeneca vaccine. So we may also get approval, at least emergency use approval, soon for that vaccine in US.
There's a similar adenovirus vaccine, which is being developed by Johnson & Johnson in the US. So that's going to be a human adenovirus vector vaccine, which will be a single dose. So that probably will have a lot of promise. So we will see the results by April. They are planning to recruit probably 60,000 people in the clinical trial stage, phase 3. In India, the concern with the Bharat Biotech vaccine we all now have is that there is approval before completion of phase 3 trial. That really is the concern. So we don't have much information, although theoretically it looks safe based on previous experience with the similar type of vaccines. I think the argument against the rollout is that we should wait for phase 3 data for the Covishield vaccine, which is the Bharat Biotech vaccine, as we did for the mRNA vaccines in the United States.
There's one question. Do you have to get vaccinated every year? I think somebody covered that already, but at this point, we don't really know. And the hope is that not. But we don't really know whether a new variant will emerge that need a different vaccine. We don't really know.
What is a vaccine passport?
Oh, just a documentation showing that you're vaccinated, while traveling. What if someone wants to get just one dose of the vaccine, not both? That's their personal choice, but we wouldn't recommend that.
You won't get the 95% efficacy from the vaccine.
Right.
How long one vaccine good for? How many months we can expect the immunity?
Yeah, that we don't know actually. This is all studies are going on because vaccine just started. So the studies are all ongoing. So we don't know. Maybe in about a year we can say that. But so far the current immune response looks, after giving your second dose vaccine, your immune responses are even higher than what you even normally get in a regular infection case. So that means it's a very good, very potent vaccine that can nicely boost your immune system.
Okay.
So I guess we need to wrap up, right?
Yeah, I think we have addressed most of the questions. Okay. In summary, we all know that we are at war with an invisible enemy. It is our social responsibility to protect ourselves and our loved ones and everybody else, and the rest of us, all other human beings. Can you hear me?
I have a simple question.
As you know, prevention is better than cure.
Hello.
I think there's a question.
Continue to wear your mask and wash your hands, and take your vaccine when it's available to you, and recommend it to the others around you. You know, now we all, you know, most of us have taken our vaccine and we are safe. We don't have any side effects. I'm sure we have evidence now vaccine is safe, even though this was made in less than a year. They have done all the testing. So I'm hoping that you will take your vaccine and you will recommend to the rest of the people. And let us help.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Are you based in India or US?
We are in US.
Yeah, where? From where?
We are in.
Which state?
I'm in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and my panelists are from different
I am in
places.
Pennsylvania too.
Okay.
That is okay, no problem.
We all get our vaccine to get rid of this pandemic. That was what we're trying to achieve by this discussion. Hopefully you have enough faith to take this vaccine. You alleviated, you know, all the fear, and we'll take the vaccine. That's our prayer.
I have one quick question. You guys talked about herd immunity. So how do we know that we have reached herd immunity in the next few months when the vaccines roll out? And and is there a reliable data source to look for this number?
Yeah, so maybe I can, again,
I have a contradiction.
There's no definitive answer, but I can.
I don't know. I was joking. I was.
Yeah, Suresh, you can unmute now.
Can I speak? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm answering the herd immunity question. So as I mentioned to you, know, if you can, it's something like if you can vaccinate about 70% population. 70% population.
Why you are not asking me my question?
Yes, sir. But if someone is speaking, we will get back to you, sir.
No, hold on.
Please.
Sir, let's answer this question. Hold on a second. Sir, identify yourself. What's your name, sir? Hello?
It's okay. Let's move on.
Okay.
Okay. So with respect to herd immunity, you know, what I can say, if we can, you know, if we can vaccinate, or if we can, you know, create based on the 95% efficacy of the vaccine, around 70 to 80% vaccination means you can, you know, reach the herd immunity threshold. So you may expect the remaining 20 to 25%, you know, will be protected. So it's around, you know, how efficient you can give the vaccination. That's all, you know, required to generate a strong herd immunity in the community.
Yes. So would CDC be the sole source of providing that data?
I don't know whether CDC can. Maybe CDC can, you know, reliably say or confirm can confirm only after, you know, having all this vaccine executed and then testing the, you know, vaccine efficacy or, you know, immunogenicity of the vaccine in about 70%. If they can say, okay, we reached 70% of the people are already, you know, immunized, or they have the enough antibody response. Once that cutoff is established, maybe they can declare that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Can I wrap up?
I think that was a great session, everybody, putting things together. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank you. First, I'd like to go on. Is there any more questions? Can I go on? Finish it up?
Wrap it up, please.
Okay. I would like to thank our chief guest, Mr. Sinha, for coming and being with us this evening. I would like to thank our awesome panel of experts, Dr. Sinu Joan, Dr. Jerry Jacob, Dr. Suresh Pallikut, Dr. Anu Mukherjee, Dr. Nisha Nigel, for sharing your expertise. I have learned a lot, and I had fun working with you all. Thank you, all the sponsors. I would like to take this opportunity to recognize and honor the WMC Global Chairman, Mr. Avi Anup, Global Vice Chair, Mr. Johnny Kurvilla, the Regional Chairman, Mr. Hari Nambudiri, our Regional President, Mrs. Thankam Aravind, and other global and regional leaders. I would like to thank the province leaders and the WMC family members participated from all over the world. I would like to extend our sincere appreciation to Mr. James Kudo for his assistance and support in making this Zoom event possible. I'm delighted to see all these people who have participated with us with all the questions and active participation in the Zoom. I'm sure there's a lot of people watching on Facebook and YouTube. I would like to thank each one of you for your time. Hope this was very informative, and we appreciate any feedback for future events. I want to thank the WMC Pennsylvania Chairperson, Mr. Sandosh Abraham, President, Mrs. Sinu Nair, Secretary, Mr. Siju John, and Treasurer, Mr. Rene Joseph. Thank you, Suraj Dinamani, for your voice blast. Thank you, Christy Matthews and Justin Jones, for your moments live streaming. Thank you, Ms. Soya, for your thoughtful poem. Thank you, Dr. Binu Shajimon and Mrs. Nimi Das, for your excellent job as MCs. The entire WMCPA team worked in unison with me to make this happen today. I'd like to thank each one of you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you and have a good night and a good day in India.
Annie has thanked everyone. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our very own Health Forum coordinator, Dr. Annie Abraham, for her hard work and leadership in putting this great panel and this event together, which is, I'm sure it was helpful for all of them, those who have attended. You know, the COVID-19 pandemic is putting new and unforeseen pressures on all of us. Thank you, Annie, for this for putting together this great event and making it a great success. However, we all have our unique roles, to play during this pandemic, and we are confident that together we will be successful in overcoming the COVID-19. Hope this session was useful to everyone. And I just wanted to remind you all that I got my vaccine. Did you get yours? So make sure everyone get vaccinated, be safe, and stay safe. Thank you all for your participation and your attention.
Thank you again.
Hey, how about